Okay, so the first piece we're going to look at is the Maiping vase from northern China. This was made in the Northern Song period in the 12th century, and this is a great example of the typical Cizhou pottery made by Song artists, as they often utilize monochromatic, elegant shapes with fluid silhouettes in their pottery. The details often reflected the patron's interests and imitate the forms of Shang and Zhou bronzes. This is known as the Maiping vase because of its high-shouldered shape, which is called Maiping. Chinese potters frequently use the graffito technique, where the potter incised details through a colored slip, much like the ancient Greek red figure technique. Another thing to note about this piece is that the potter used tightly twining vine and flower motifs to accommodate the vase's shape, something that we've also seen in the marine-style octopus flask from Crete, where the potter used the tentacles to embrace the shape of the flask. Another work from the Northern Song period is the Baekje Sea Pagoda. This was constructed under the Liao Dynasty that ruled part of northern China and whose emperors were important patrons to architecture, painting, and sculpture. In fact, this is the tallest wooden pagoda ever constructed. The pagoda is one of the most well-known parts of the Buddhist complex and resembles the tall towers of Indian, Hindu temples, and later Buddhist stupas. Pagodas house relics and provide a worship place where worshippers can focus their energy for the devotion of Buddha. Wooden pagodas are most common and the standard in Japan. However, the Chinese and Koreans have also been known to make stone and brick pagodas. This pagoda utilizes an intricate beam and bracket system and features 9 stories of alternating main story and windowless mezzanines with cantilevered balconies that decrease in size, the balconies visually lightening the building's mass. Overall, the building is a prime example of the architectural and visual ingenuity of the architects of the Liao Dynasty. When the Yin captured the emperor of the Northern Song, the emperor's sixth son escaped and eventually established a new Song capital in the south, marking the start of the Southern Song period. Like the Northern Song period, the capital censored paintings, and some emperors even took special interest in the painters of the Imperial Painting Academy and directed the painters to add brief poems to the paintings. The Ma Wan family had some of the most famous Song painters, who have been working for the Song dynasty since the Northern Song period. Ma Yun painted this piece entitled On a Mountain Path in Spring. Ma reduced the landscape to only a few natural elements and mostly focused on the lower left foreground to portray his setting and subject. The depicted figure looks to the distance, and the viewer's eyes follow along the strategically placed branches to the horizon, following the figure's gaze. Ma included a short poem in the upper right corner that reads, "Brushed by his sleeves, wild flowers dance in the wind. Fleeing from him, hidden birds cut short their songs." Landscape paintings like this one are perfect examples of the Chinese ideals of peace and unity with nature. This can be compared to the much larger painting, Travelers Among Mountains and Streams. Both paintings show unity and peacefulness with nature. However, the use of space differs dramatically. The painting on the left shows a use of foreground, middle ground, and background and is purely landscape, whereas the painting on the right shows a scene that integrates people with nature. Some Southern Song painters focused on religious motifs. Although Neo-Confucianism, a blend of traditional Chinese thought and selected Buddhist concepts, was the leading practice philosophy, traditional Buddhist themes remained popular subjects. This painting was one of a 100-scroll series that an abbot used in order to raise money for a nearby Buddhist temple. The brightly attired Lohans, enlightened disciples of Buddha, walk in slow dignity and throw down alms to the dirt-colored beggars beneath them. The painter distinctly uses fore, middle, and background, along with color usage and a contrast of flowing and jagged shapes in order to show the keen distinction between the enlightened Buddhist followers and the unfortunate beggars. Color is used symbolically instead of imitating nature exactly, and the composition of the landscape also reflects the two different circles of being, the lush and lofty peaks of the Lohans compared to the desert-like setting of the beggars, are contrasts that cannot be missed. Chan Buddhism, which stressed the quest for personal enlightenment through meditation, was a new school of thought that flourished under the Song dynasty. Lang Kai was a popular painter among Chan monks and was a part of the painting academy of the imperial court in his earlier years. It was most known for his abbreviated, expressive style of ink painting and used different brushstrokes and saturation of color to offer visual accents. In Kai's painting, Six Chan Patriarch Chopping Bamboo, he illustrates the idea that spiritual enlightenment can happen even during the most simple of tasks. This style of painting showed superior training and high ability. Korea has borders with Russia and China and faces the Japanese islands. This pivotal location shows the influence that these surrounding Asian cultures have on Korean culture and art and the influence that Korea has on them. Korean words were originally written using Chinese characters, although later Koreans adapted their own. Koreans also have similar ethnical roots related to Siberians, Mongolians, and Japanese. For more than 7 centuries, Korea was divided into 3 native kingdoms, Goguryeo, Baekje and Silla, from about 57 BCE to 668 CE, and later this became known as the Three Kingdoms period. They adapted Buddhism from China and in turn transmitted it to Japan a couple of centuries later. Perhaps the most well-known and important piece of ancient Korean art is the Silla crown. This golden jade crown was found in a Silla tomb and is a perfect testament to the wealth of the ancient Korean kingdom and the skills of its artists. Dating around the 5th or 6th century, the crown justifies the Silla capital's name, Kamsung, meaning city of gold. The crown includes gold rivets and wires, and comma-shaped jade stones adorn the crown. Some archaeologists believe that it may represent a stylized tree and antler forms that symbolize life and supernatural powers. The technique of working with sheets of gold may have come from northeastern China, but the crown has no Chinese counterpart and the design is uniquely Korean. When the Chinese introduced Buddhism to Koreans in the 4th century, this created a large demand for Buddha and Bodhisattva figures. Originally, they were closely modeled after the Chinese figures, but later matured into their own distinct regional artistic tradition. This figure shows Bodhisattva Maitreya, the future Buddha, sitting in meditation with only a simple necklace, a big contrast to the ornate necklaces the Chinese depicted him in. He has slender proportion and has a contemplative posture and expression. His chest is bare, however he wears a long skirt that cascades in sharp folds, also differing to that of Chinese bodhisattva figures. In 1668 CE, the Silla kingdom conquered the other Korean kingdoms and formed one large nation. This era, which lasted from 668 to 935, became known as the Unified Silla Kingdom, and to many is thought to be Korea's golden age. Silla rulers used Buddhism not only for spiritual enlightenment, but also believed that temples could provide protection from external enemies. No temples exist today, however, among temple remains, archaeologists have found a granite Buddhist monument in a cave temple. Some records suggest it was built under the supervision of a member of the royal family. This would explain the small scale of Sekorum, as it creates a sense of intimacy and supports the idea that it was used as a private chapel for the royal family. The main rotunda, the circular area under the dome, measures only 21 feet, and the inside of the stone pieces being mortared together, they are riveted to the wall. Surrounding the main statue are small niches for Bodhisattva, Lohan, and other figures. The center figure is the Shakyamuni Buddha and remains faithful to its iconic prototype, the Sarnath Buddha in India. Today, art historians consider this Korean statue as one of the finest images of Buddha in East Asia. Although Buddhism was established religion, Confucianism, introduced from China in the Silla era, increasingly began to shape Korean social and political conventions. The three kingdoms became more distinct in their political view, although they were still a part of the unified Silla. The unified Silla and Goryeo kingdoms began to overlap, and by 935, the Goryeo Dynasty came to power and dominated for the next 3 centuries. In 1231, the Mongols, after invading China, pursued on to Korea, starting a war that lasted 30 years. The Goryeo forcibly formed an alliance with the Mongols once the Mongols took over China. Goryeo potters in the 12th century made celadon ware, which are still admired today. These feature ornate engravings and inlaid designs, which painters painted over with a highly translucent glaze. After they were fired, the glaze turned to grays, pale blues and greens, and brownish olive tones. The Baekje vase, named after its shape, which corresponds to the Maiping shape in China, is one of the most well-known because it's the largest known Maiping vase. The potter used the inlay technique that they are most famous for today and then painted over it with a blue-green glaze. It includes the still popular nature motifs, including herons and lotus flowers, and the border motifs on the top, and the broader motifs at the top than the bottom show the potter's skill in utilizing the dynamic relationship between ornamentation and ceramic volume, much like what can be seen in the Maiping vase in China. From India to China to Korea to Japan, Eastern Asia is a chain of ideas where each country adapts and transforms similar teachings and concepts, whether that be religious, cultural, or artistic, and makes them all their own.